They say money can't buy happiness, but it can certainly buy silence. For 3 years, Andrew Vance thought she was living a fairy tale marriage with tech mogul Julian Thorne. But fairy tales don't usually end with a handprint on your face in front of 20 witnesses. When Julian's mother, the terrifying Victoria Thorne, slapped Andrew across the face at their annual gala dinner, the room went dead silent. Everyone looked at Julian, the husband who swore to protect her. He didn't stand up. He didn't scream. He just took a sip of his Pinot Noir. But they forgot one thing. The quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous. And Julian's little sister, Sophia, was done being quiet. The diamond necklace felt less like jewelry and more like a cold, heavy collar around Andrew's neck. Standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror in the master bedroom of their Manhattan penthouse, Andrew Vance tried to force a smile. The reflection staring back at her was beautiful. Flawless makeup, a gown that cost more than her father's annual salary, and hair pinned up in a style that screamed old money. But the eyes were tired. They were the eyes of a woman who had spent 36 months walking on eggshells. "Are you ready yet? We're going to be late," a voice called from the doorway. Julian Thorne stood there, adjusting his cufflinks. He was undeniably handsome, with the kind of sharp jawline and icy blue eyes that graced the covers of Forbes and GQ. He was the golden boy of the Thorne dynasty, the heir to a real estate and tech empire that spanned 3 continents. To the outside world, he was Prince Charming. To Andrew, he was a stranger she shared a bed with. "I'm ready, Julian," Andrew said softly, turning to face him. "Do I look okay? I know how important tonight is to your mother." Julian scanned her up and down, his expression unreadable. He didn't smile. He didn't tell her she looked beautiful. He walked over, reached out, and slightly adjusted the strap of her dress, frowning. "It's a bit low cut, isn't it?" he muttered. "Mother hates it when you display too much. Available skin. It looks desperate." Andrew felt the sting of the insult, but she swallowed it down. It was a practiced reflex by now. "It's the dress your sister, Sophia, picked out for me. She said it was elegant," Julian scoffed, turning on his heel. "Sophia does things just to annoy Mother. Don't be a pawn in their little war, Andrew. Just try not to embarrass me tonight. The senator is going to be there, and so is the board of directors. If Mother asks you about your charity work, keep it brief. No one wants to hear the sob stories about the orphanage." He walked out of the room without waiting for her. Andrew took a deep breath, fighting back the tears that threatened to ruin her mascara. Just one more dinner, she told herself. Just get through Victoria's birthday dinner, and then we can go on vacation. Things will get better. But deep down, she knew they wouldn't. The ride to the Thorne estate in the Hamptons was silent. The chauffeur drove the Rolls-Royce with a smoothness that made the world outside feel like a movie projection. Julian spent the entire 2-hour drive typing furiously on his phone, occasionally cursing under his breath about stock prices and mergers. Andrew looked out the window, her hand resting on the leather seat, inches from Julian's leg. He didn't reach for her. He hadn't held her hand in public in over a year. She remembered when they first met. She was a scholarship student working as a barista to pay for her art degree. He was the customer who tipped $100 for a latte because he liked her smile. It had been a whirlwind romance. He had been charming, attentive, and seemingly desperate to escape the rigidity of his high society life. He told her he loved her because she was real, because she came from nothing and built herself up. Now it seemed he hated her for the very same reasons. As the iron gates of the Thorne Manor came into view, looming against the twilight sky like a fortress, Andrew felt a knot of dread tighten in her stomach. The house wasn't a home. It was a museum of judgment, and the curator was Victoria Thorne. "Listen to me," Julian said, finally breaking the silence as the car crunched over the gravel driveway. "Mother is in a mood. The merger with the Kensingtons is stalling. Don't speak unless spoken to. And for God's sake, use the right fork this time." "I made one mistake 2 years ago, Julian," Andrew whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "One mistake is all it takes in this world, Andrew," he snapped. "We aren't in your parents' little apartment in Queens anymore." The car stopped. The door was opened by a butler who looked at Andrew with a pity that was almost worse than disdain. They stepped out into the cool evening air. The grand oak doors opened, revealing the foyer that was larger than Andrew's entire childhood home. Standing at the top of the grand staircase was Victoria Thorne. She was 60, but looked 40, thanks to the best surgeons in Switzerland. She wore a gown of deep crimson, her posture rigid, her face a mask of cold calculation. "You're late," Victoria said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the marble hall like a cracking whip. "Traffic, Mother," Julian said, walking up the stairs and kissing her cheek. Victoria's eyes shifted to Andrew. She didn't offer a cheek. She didn't offer a hand. She just stared, her gaze raking over the dress, the hair, the shoes. "I see you're wearing the necklace," Victoria said, her lip curling slightly. "It was my grandmother's. Try not to lose it. I hear the crime rates in... Where is it you're from?" "The Bronx?" "Quite high." "Queens, Victoria," Andrew said, keeping her head high. "And I've never lost anything in my life." "There's a first time for everything," Victoria replied, turning her back on them. "Dinner is served in 10 minutes. Fix your lipstick, Andrew. You look pale. It makes you look weak." Andrew watched her mother-in-law walk away. She looked at Julian, waiting for him to say something. To say, "Don't talk to my wife like that." Julian was already checking his phone again. "Hurry up, Andrew," he muttered. "Don't keep her waiting." The dining room at Thorne Manor was designed to intimidate. The table was a long slab of mahogany that could seat 30, illuminated by a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than a small yacht. Tonight, there were only 12 guests, but they were the 12 people who controlled the social and financial heartbeat of the city. There was Senator Billings, the heiress to the Kensington fortune, Clara, who Victoria had originally wanted Julian to marry, a high-profile divorce attorney named Marcus Blackwood, and several board members of Thorne Industries. And then there was Sophia. Sophia Thorne, Julian's 22-year-old sister, was the black sheep of the family. While everyone else was dressed in tuxedos and designer gowns, Sophia was wearing a sharp, black tailored suit with a silk shirt unbuttoned slightly at the top. Her dark hair was cut in a severe bob, and she wore combat boots hidden under the table. She was scrolling on a tablet, ignoring everyone. When Andrew entered the room, Sophia looked up. For a split second, her guarded expression softened. She gave Andrew a barely perceptible nod, a silent solidarity. Sophia hated these dinners more than anyone, but her trust fund depended on her attendance. Andrew took her seat next to Julian. Directly across from her sat Clara Kensington, who smiled like a shark sensing blood in the water. "Andrew, darling," Clara purred, swirling her wine. "I heard you're taking painting classes again. How quaint. Do you actually plan to sell anything, or is it just a hobby to pass the time while Julian works?" "I have a gallery showing next month, actually," Andrew said politely. "In Brooklyn." Victoria, sitting at the head of the table, laughed softly. It was a cruel, tinkling sound. "Brooklyn. How fitting. I suppose people there appreciate that sort of raw, untrained aesthetic. Her art is incredible, actually. A voice cut through. Everyone turned. It was Sophia. She didn't look up from her tablet. I saw her portfolio. It's better than that pretentiously overpriced garbage you bought for the hallway, Mother. The table went silent. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Sophia, put the device away, and do not speak to me with that tone. Just stating facts, Sophia shrugged, finally locking the screen and placing it on the table. She winked at Andrew. Julian cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the tension. Mother, the soup is excellent. Is this the truffle cream? Yes, Victoria said, her gaze returning to Andrew. So, Andrew, Julian tells me you've been spending a lot of time visiting your father. Is he still unemployed? Andrew griped her napkin under the table. Her father had been laid off from the factory 6 months ago due to health issues. He's recovering from surgery, Victoria. He worked hard his whole life. I'm sure, Victoria said dismissively. It's just concerning. We have a reputation to uphold. It doesn't look good when the wife of the CEO has family members begging for state assistance. Perhaps we should cut him a check, Julian, just to keep him quiet and away from the press? That won't be necessary, Andrew said, her voice firming up. He has never asked for a dime, and neither have I. Oh, please, Clara Kensington laughed. You married Julian. You asked for all the dimes, honey. The table chuckled. Julian smiled tightly, swirling his wine, refusing to meet Andrew's eyes. Andrew felt the heat rising in her cheeks. She was humiliated, surrounded by people who viewed her as a parasite. She reached for her water glass, her hand shaking slightly from the adrenaline and anger. As she lifted the crystal goblet, Clara Kensington, who was reaching for the salt, accidentally knocked her elbow against Andrew's arm. Splash! Ice-cold water and a slice of lemon flew across the table, landing directly onto Victoria Thorne's lap. The water soaked into the crimson silk instantly. The silence that followed was deafening. It was heavier than the chandelier above them. Victoria slowly stood up. The wet stain was spreading on her dress. Her face went from pale to a shade of red that matched the fabric. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Andrew gasped, grabbing her napkin and standing up to help. Clara bumped me. I didn't mean to. Don't touch me, Victoria shrieked. It was the first time Andrew had ever heard her raise her voice to a scream. You clumsy, incompetent little gold digger. It was an accident, Andrew pleaded, looking at Julian. Julian, tell her. Clara hit my arm. Julian looked at Clara. Clara widened her eyes in innocent shock. I did no such thing. She's been shaking all night, probably nervous because she knows she doesn't belong here. Julian looked at his mother, then at his wife. The room waited for his verdict. Andrew, Julian sighed, looking exhausted. Why are you always so careless? Just sit down and stop making a scene. I'm not making a scene, Andrew cried, tears finally spilling over. She's lying. Victoria walked around the table. Her heels clicked on the hardwood floor like the ticking of a bomb. She stopped directly in front of Andrew. She was shorter than Andrew, but in that moment she seemed 10 feet tall. I have tolerated you for 3 years, Victoria hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper that everyone could hear. I have tolerated your lack of breeding, your embarrassing family, and your complete inability to adapt to our world. But you have ruined my birthday dinner. You have ruined this dress. And you are ruining my son's life. Mother, please, Julian said weakly from his chair. He didn't stand up. Shut up, Julian, Victoria snapped without looking at him. She stared into Andrew's eyes. You are nothing. You are a street rat wearing a gown I paid for. You are trash. I am his wife, Andrew said, her voice shaking but defiant. and I deserve respect." Victoria laughed. "Respect? You earn respect. You don't marry into it." And then, without warning, Victoria Thorne raised her hand and brought it down across Andrew's face. Smack! The sound was sharp and sickeningly loud. It echoed off the high ceilings. Andrew's head whipped to the side. Her cheek burned as if she had been branded. She stood there, frozen, hand hovering over her cheek. She looked at Julian. Julian was staring at his plate. He took a sip of his wine. He did nothing. The senator looked away. Clara smirked. The lawyer, Marcus Blackwood, frowned and leaned forward, looking concerned, but stayed seated. Andrew felt her heart shatter. It wasn't the slap that broke her. It was the silence of the man who promised to love her until death did them part. "Get out of my sight," Victoria spat. "Go to the kitchen and eat with the staff. That's where you belong." Andrew turned to run. She just wanted to leave. She wanted to vanish. "Wait." The voice came from the other end of the table. It was calm, authoritative, and laced with a rage that made Victoria's temper tantrum look like child's play. A chair scraped loudly against the floor. Sophia Thorne stood up. She walked around the table, her heavy combat boots thudding ominously. She didn't look at her mother. She walked straight to Andrew, took a napkin, and gently dabbed the tears from Andrew's uninjured cheek. Then, Sophia turned to face the table. She looked at Julian, who was finally looking up, fear dawning in his eyes. She looked at Victoria, who was breathing heavily. "You really shouldn't have done that, Mother," Sophia said, her voice dangerously low. "Sit down, Sophia," Victoria warned. "This doesn't concern you." "Oh, but it does," Sophia smiled. But it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a predator's smile. She reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a small, black USB drive. She tossed it onto the table. It slid across the mahogany surface and stopped right in front of Julian's wine glass. "Because," Sophia continued, "I think the board of directors, and specifically Mr. Blackwood here, would be very interested to know why trash like Andrew was tricked into signing those supplemental insurance documents last week. You remember those, don't you, Julian?" Julian's face went white. The glass of wine in his hand trembled. "Sophia, don't," Julian whispered. Sophia ignored him. She put an arm around Andrew's trembling shoulders. "Andrew isn't going to the kitchen, and she isn't leaving. But you," Sophia pointed at her brother. "You might want to call your lawyer, because I'm about to show everyone exactly how the Thorne family makes its money. And spoiler alert, it involves forging Andrew's signature." The silence in the dining room was no longer heavy, it was volatile. It felt like the split second after a grenade pin is pulled, just before the explosion. Julian stared at the black USB drive sitting innocently next to his wine glass. He looked as if he wanted to vomit. "What are you talking about, Sophia?" Victoria demanded, her voice regaining its icy composure, though her hand clutched the pearls at her neck. "Supplemental insurance? Don't be ridiculous. Julian handles the family finances impeccably." "Does he?" Sophia smirked. She tapped her tablet screen. Suddenly, the large, smart mirror on the far wall of the dining room, usually used to display digital art, flickered to life. It didn't show art. It showed a PDF document. The header read, "Transfer of Liability, Thorne Logistics, Subsidiary B14. Below it, highlighted in neon yellow, was a signature. Andrew Vance. "Does everyone see that?" Sophia asked, her voice calm and clear. Last week, Julian told Andrew she needed to sign some papers for a spousal life insurance policy in case anything happened to him. He said it was standard procedure for the CAO's wife. Andrew, trusting her husband, signed without reading the fine print. Andrew stared at the screen, her vision blurring. I remember that. He brought it to me in bed. He said he was worried about my future. He was worried about his future, Andrew, Sophia corrected ruthlessly. Thorn Logistics subsidiary B14 isn't a company. It's a graveyard. It's a shell company holding $20 million in toxic debt and 3 pending lawsuits for environmental negligence. And as of last Thursday, the sole owner and legally liable party for all that debt isn't Thorn Industries anymore. It's Mrs. Andrew Vance. A collective gasp swept through the room. The senator choked on his wine. Marcus Blackwood, the lawyer, snatched the USB drive off the table and plugged it into his own laptop, his fingers flying across the keys to verify the data. "Julian?" Andrew whispered, turning to her husband. She felt cold, colder than she had ever felt in her life. "Tell me she's lying. You wouldn't put $20 million of debt in my name. You're my husband." Julian finally looked at her. The charm was gone. The handsome mask had slipped, revealing a desperate, sweating coward. "It was just a temporary measure," Julian stammered, standing up and knocking his chair over. "Andrew, listen to me. The fiscal quarter ends on Friday. I just needed to move the liabilities off the main books for 3 days so the merger with Kensington goes through. I was going to move it back next week. You were never in any real danger." "You committed fraud against your own wife," Marcus Blackwood said, looking up from his laptop, his face grave. "Julian, if this signature was obtained under false pretenses, that is a felony. And since you did it to artificially inflate stock value for a merger, that's securities fraud. The SEC will eat you alive." "Only if someone tells them," Victoria cut in. Her shock was gone, replaced by instant damage control. She looked around the table. "Everyone here is a friend of the family. We can resolve this internally." She turned her cold, dead eyes on Andrew. "Andrew, dear," Victoria said, her tone suddenly shifting to a sickeningly sweet coo. "You see, Julian was under a lot of pressure. He made a mistake. But we are family. We protect each other. If you just sign a waiver saying you understood the risks, we can give you, let's say, a monthly allowance, a generous one. 50,000 a month." Andrew looked at Victoria, then at Julian. Julian was nodding eagerly. Yes, Andrew," Julian pleaded, reaching for her hand. "Baby, please. It's just business. I did it for us. If the stock drops, we lose everything. The penthouse, the cars, the life you love. It all goes away. Just stay calm. Don't listen to Sophia. She's just jealous because Dad left the company to me." Andrew looked down at her hand. The hand Julian was holding. The hand that wore the diamond ring he gave her. It felt like a shackle. She pulled her hand away slowly. Then, with a sudden burst of adrenaline, she ripped the diamond ring off her finger. "The life I love?" Andrew asked, her voice trembling with a rage she didn't know she possessed. "I hate this life, Julian. I hate the way you treat me. I hate the way your mother looks at me. And I hate that I convinced myself you were a good man." She threw the ring. It hit Julian squarely in the chest and bounced onto the floor with a hollow clink. "I'm not signing anything," Andrew said, backing away. "And I'm not staying here." "You can't leave," Victoria screeched, losing her composure again. "You own that debt. If you walk out that door, we will ruin you. You'll be burying your father in a pauper's grave." "Touch her, and I upload this entire file to the New York Times," Sophia said, stepping between Victoria and Andrew. She held up her phone. "I have the press contact drafted. 1 click, mother, try me." Victoria froze. She knew Sophia. She knew her daughter didn't make idle threats. Sophia grabbed Andrew's arm. "Come on, let's go." "Julian!" Victoria barked. "Stop them!" Julian took a step forward, his face twisting into anger. "Andrew, get back here! You are my wife, and you will do as you are told." He reached out to grab Andrew's arm, his grip bruising. Crack! Sophia didn't hesitate. She spun around and delivered a swift, practiced kick to Julian's shin with her heavy combat boot, followed by a shoving palm to his chest. Julian stumbled back, crashing into the dessert cart, sending pastries and silverware flying. "She's not your wife anymore, Julian," Sophia spat. "She's your victim, and I'm the witness." Sophia dragged a stunned Andrew out of the dining room, through the grand foyer, and out the heavy oak doors. The cool night air hit Andrew's face, mixing with the tears streaming down her cheeks. They didn't wait for the valet. Sophia marched her straight to a matte black motorcycle parked illegally on the front lawn. "Get on," Sophia commanded, handing Andrew a helmet. "Sophia, I don't know where to go," Andrew sobbed, her hands shaking so hard she couldn't buckle the strap. "You're coming with me," Sophia said, fastening the helmet for her. Her eyes, usually so guarded, were fierce and protective. "You're safe now, Andrew. I promise." As the engine roared to life, Andrew looked back at the house one last time. She saw Julian standing in the doorway, silhouetted by the light, looking small and pathetic. They sped off into the darkness, leaving the Thorne legacy crumbling behind them. Andrew woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of city traffic. For a moment, she panicked, reaching for the silk sheets of the penthouse bed, but her hands found rough, comfortable cotton. She opened her eyes. She wasn't in the penthouse. She was in a loft with exposed brick walls, vintage movie posters, and piles of books everywhere. Sophia's apartment. Memory rushed back like a tidal wave. The dinner, the slap, the USB drive, the debt. Andrew sat up, groaning. Her head pounded. She walked into the bathroom and looked in the mirror. The red mark on her cheek from Victoria's slap had turned into a faint, ugly bruise. But it was the look in her eyes that scared her. She looked haunted. "You're up," Sophia said from the kitchen area. She was wearing oversized sweatpants and a band t-shirt, looking nothing like the heiress she was. She handed Andrew a mug of black coffee. "Drink? You're going to need it. We have a meeting in an hour." "A meeting?" Andrew asked, her voice raspy. "With who?" "With a shark," Sophia said grimly. "But he's our shark." Andrew sat on a bar stool, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "Sophia, why did you do it? Why did you blow up your family like that? They'll cut you off. You'll lose your inheritance." Sophia laughed dryly. "Andrew, I've been looking for a reason to burn that bridge for years. I just needed a match. Watching them treat you like cattle was the match." She paused, her expression softening. "And I heard them talking, Andrew, last week. Julian and Mother." Andrew's stomach tightened. "What did they say?" "They were betting on how long it would take for you to break," Sophia said quietly. "Julian said he'd divorce you once the merger was secure and the debt was safely anchored to your name. He planned to leave you with nothing. He was already looking at apartments for Clara Kensington." Andrew closed her eyes. The pain was sharp, but strangely, it wasn't the heartbreak of lost love. It was the stinging clarity of betrayal. The man she loved never existed. He was a character played by a sociopath. "So," Andrew said, opening her eyes. The tears were gone. "What do we do?" "We fight," Sophia said. "But first, we need to check your accounts." Sophia slid a laptop over. Andrew logged into her bank account. Access denied. She tried her credit card portal. Account frozen. Reported stolen. "He froze everything," Andrew whispered. "I have $12 in my wallet. That's it." "Predictable," Sophia muttered. He reported the cards stolen so the bank would lock them. He wants to starve you out. He thinks you'll come crawling back when you realize you can't buy food. Suddenly, Andrew's phone buzzed. It was Julian. Sophia nodded. Answer it. Put it on speaker. Let's hear the pitch. Andrew took a deep breath and swiped the screen. Hello. Andrew! Julian's voice came through, frantic and breathless. Thank God you picked up. Where are you? I've been worried sick. Sophia is unstable. You know that. You can't trust her. I'm safe, Julian, Andrew said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Why are my bank accounts frozen? It's a security protocol, Julian lied smoothly. After the scene. Last night, Mother was worried about identity theft. We just paused them for your protection. Just come home, baby. We can fix this. I've already torn up those papers. It was all a misunderstanding. I have a chef making your favorite breakfast, pancakes with the blueberry syrup. It was the blueberry syrup that did it. It was such a small, manipulative detail. He was trying to bribe her with breakfast while he ruined her life. You tore up the papers? Andrew asked. Yes. Gone. Shredded, Julian promised. Liar, Sophia whispered, pointing at the laptop screen where the digital trail of the debt transfer was still active on the government registrar. Julian, Andrew said, her voice dropping an octave. I saw the registrar. The debt is still in my name. And I know about Clara. Silence on the other end. Then the tone changed. The frantic husband vanished. The CEO appeared. Fine, Julian said, his voice cold and metallic. You want to play the hard way? Go ahead. You have no money. You have no lawyers. You have a sick father who needs medical care that I pay for. If you don't walk through my front door in 1 hour, I stop the payments for your father's nursing home. He'll be on the street by noon. Andrew felt the blood drain from her face. You wouldn't? Try me, Julian hissed. You're a nobody, Andrew. Without me, you're just a waitress from Queens. Come home, sign the NDA, and be a good wife, or watch your world burn. The line went dead. Andrew dropped the phone. She felt like she couldn't breathe. He's going to hurt my dad. No, he won't, a deep voice said from the doorway. Andrew jumped. She hadn't heard the door open. Standing there was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite. He was tall, wearing a suit that cost more than the Thorns Rolls-Royce, but he wore it carelessly, with the top button undone. He had sharp, intelligent eyes, and a scar running through his left eyebrow. Gabriel Stone, Sophia introduced him, the only lawyer in New York who hates the Thorn family more than I do. Gabriel walked into the room, carrying a briefcase. He looked at Andrew, analyzing her in a second. Mrs. Vance, or do you prefer Miss Vance? Just Andrew, she managed. Andrew, Gabriel said, setting his briefcase on the counter. Sophia called me last night. I've been busy. He pulled out a folder. First, Gabriel said, I have already arranged for a private transfer of your father to the St. Jude Medical Center. My firm is covering the cost. Julian can cancel whatever checks he wants. Your father is already in an ambulance moving to a better facility that the Thorns can't touch. Andrew put a hand over her mouth, a sob of relief escaping. Why? Why would you do that? Because Sophia paid my retainer, Gabriel smirked. And because I intend to take Julian Thorn for everything he has. But I need your help. He opened the folder, revealing photos, bank statements, and a timeline. The debt transfer is just the tip of the iceberg, Gabriel explained. Julian and Victoria have been running a money laundering scheme through their charity foundation for 5 years. They use the orphans to clean dirty money from offshore investors. But we need proof, real, physical proof. The digital trail is good, but a jury needs a smoking gun. What do you need me to do? Andrew asked. Gabriel leaned forward. Julian thinks you're weak. He thinks you're broke and scared. He expects you to crawl back. He wants me to come home in an hour, Andrew said. Then go, Gabriel said. Andrew recoiled. What? Go back to him, Gabriel said, his eyes hard. Play the part. Be the scared, submissive wife. Apologize to Victoria. Let them think they won. And while you are in that house, I need you to get into the safe in Julian's private study. The red ledger. That's where he keeps the physical log of the black market investors. That's dangerous, Sophia said, looking worried. If he catches her. He won't, Andrew interrupted. She stood up. She walked to the bathroom mirror again. She looked at the bruise on her cheek. She reached for a pair of scissors sitting on the counter. Andrew? Sophia asked. Andrew grabbed a chunk of her long, perfectly styled Thorn-wife hair. Snip. She cut it. Then again. And again. She cut her hair until it was a jagged, shoulder-length mess. It looked wild. It looked like her. She turned around, her eyes burning with a cold fire. He wants his wife back, Andrew said, dropping the scissors. I'll give him a performance he'll never forget. I'll get the ledger, Gabriel, and then we bury them. Gabriel smiled. It was a terrifying smile. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. The heavy iron gates of Thorn Manor opened slowly, groaning as if they were reluctant to let Andrew back in. She sat in the back of an Uber, clutching a small, tattered duffel bag. She had refused the town car Julian offered. She needed to look beaten. She needed to look like a woman who had hit rock bottom and had nowhere else to turn. As the car pulled up to the main entrance, Andrew checked her reflection in the rearview mirror one last time. Her eyes were red-rimmed, thanks to an onion she'd sliced at Sophia's apartment before leaving. Her clothes were wrinkled, and her hair, once her crowning glory, was now a choppy, uneven mess that framed her face in jagged spikes. You look like a nervous breakdown, Sophia had told her before she left. It's perfect. The front door opened before she even stepped out of the car. Julian stood there. He wasn't smiling. He looked triumphant. Andrew stepped out, keeping her head down. Jesus, look at you, Julian sneered, walking down the steps. He didn't hug her. He inspected her like a damaged package. He reached out and touched the ends of her hacked-off hair. What did you do to yourself? You look insane. I just wanted it to stop, Andrew whispered, making her voice tremble. The noise, the pressure. I just wanted to be me again, but I messed it up. I mess everything up. Julian's ego inflated visibly. This was the narrative he wanted. Andrew is unstable. Andrew needs me. Well, clearly, he scoffed. Come inside. Mother is in the drawing room. You need to apologize to her before we even discuss your allowance. Andrew followed him inside. The house felt different now. Before, it had been a prison. Now, it was a crime scene. And she was the detective. In the drawing room, Victoria was sipping tea, reading a fashion magazine. She didn't look up when Andrew entered. She's back, Julian announced. Victoria lowered the magazine slowly. Her eyes scanned Andrew's disheveled appearance. A cruel smile touched her lips. I told you, Julian, Victoria said softly. They always come back when the hunger sets in. The world is a cold place for a girl with no skills and a sick father. I'm sorry, Victoria, Andrew said, staring at the carpet. I didn't mean to cause a scene. I was just stressed. I'll sign the papers. I'll do whatever you want. Please, just don't hurt my dad. Your father is fine, Julian said dismissively. I unblocked the payments, for now. But you have work to do to earn back our trust. Tonight is the Charity Ball Planning Committee meeting, Victoria said, standing up. "Julian and I have to prepare the presentation. You, Andrew, will go upstairs, take a shower, and fix that hideous hair. Wear a wig if you have to. Then you will stay in your room. We don't want the committee seeing you looking like a mental patient." "Yes, Victoria," Andrew said. "Good. Go," Julian commanded. Andrew walked up the grand staircase, feeling their eyes on her back. She went into the master bedroom, closed the door, and waited. She counted to 10, then 20. She heard the heavy front door open and close downstairs. She heard the murmur of voices as the committee members began to arrive. Julian and Victoria would be distracted for at least an hour. It was time. Andrew took off her shoes. She moved silently across the plush hallway carpet toward Julian's private study. The door was locked, of course. She pulled a bobby pin from her pocket, not to pick the lock, she wasn't that skilled, but to retrieve the spare key Julian hid on top of the door frame. He was arrogant enough to think no one knew it was there. He had used it once, 3 years ago, when he lost his primary keys, and Andrew had watched him. She felt the cool metal, grabbed it, and turned the lock. Click. She slipped inside and closed the door softly. The study smelled of expensive scotch and old paper. It was the nerve center of the Thorne corruption. She went straight to the painting behind the desk, a portrait of Julian's grandfather. She swung it open. There was the safe. Sophia had briefed her on this part. "He changes the code every month, but he's predictable. It's always the stock price of Thorne Industries from the day he took over," followed by his own birthday. Andrew closed her eyes, visualizing the numbers Sophia had memorized for her. 45 12 or 22. She typed it in. Beep, 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 error. Andrew's heart stopped. He had changed it. "Think, Andrew, think," she whispered, panic rising. "What is he obsessed with? Himself? Money? Victory?" She looked around the desk. There was a framed photo. It wasn't of her. It wasn't of his family. It was a photo of him shaking hands with the senator after closing the Kensington deal last week. The date was stamped on the bottom of the frame in silver, 11/24/25. She tried it. 11/24/25. Click. Whirr. The heavy steel door swung open. Andrew let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She reached inside. There were stacks of cash, passports, and a gun. But at the bottom, buried under a pile of deeds, was a leather-bound book, the Red Ledger. She pulled it out and flipped it open. It was all there. Handwritten logs of bribes to city officials, money laundering transfers from the orphanage charity, and illegal dumping permits signed off by the senator. It was a roadmap to prison for the entire Thorne family. "Got you," she whispered. She shoved the ledger into the back of her waistband and covered it with her oversized sweater. She turned to leave. The door handle turned. Andrew froze. There was nowhere to hide. The door opened and Julian walked in. He was holding 2 glasses of scotch. He stopped dead in his tracks when he saw her. "Andrew?" he asked, confused. Then his eyes darted to the open safe, then back to her. The confusion vanished. His face darkened into a mask of pure rage. "What are you doing?" Julian asked, his voice low and dangerous. He set the glasses down on a side table. I was looking for a pen," Andrew stammered, backing up against the desk. "Don't lie to me," Julian roared, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. He grabbed her by the shoulders and slammed her against the desk. "You're stealing from me, after I took you back? After I saved your pathetic father?" "You didn't save him," Andrew yelled, dropping the act. She shoved him back. "You held him hostage. You're a monster, Julian." Julian stumbled back, surprised by her strength. He saw the bulge under her sweater. "What is that?" He lunged for her. "Give it to me." He grabbed her shirt. Ripping was the fabric. The red ledger fell to the floor with a heavy thud. Julian looked at the book. His face went pale. "You found the ledger," he whispered. He looked at her with a mix of horror and disbelief. You didn't come back to apologize. You came for this." "I came to finish it," Andrew said, breathing hard. "It's over, Julian. Sophia has the digital files. I have the book. Gabriel Stone is filing the papers right now." Julian laughed. It was a manic, terrified sound. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "You think you can walk out of here with that?" He tapped the screen. "Security, get to the study. Now!" He looked at Andrew, his eyes cold. "You're not leaving this house, Andrew, and neither is that book. You're going to have a tragic accident, a fall down the stairs. Suicide, maybe?" The distraught wife, mentally unstable, couldn't handle the pressure. He took a step toward her. Andrew grabbed a heavy crystal paperweight from the desk. "Stay back." "Or what?" Julian sneered. "You'll hit me? You don't have the guts." The door burst open. 2 massive private security guards entered. "Restrain her," Julian commanded, "and get that book." The guards moved forward. Andrew backed into the corner, clutching the paperweight. She was trapped. The first guard reached for Andrew. She swung the paperweight, catching him in the wrist. He grunted, but didn't stop. He grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back. "Let me go!" she screamed. "Get the book!" Julian barked, picking up the ledger himself. He held it like a holy relic. "You stupid girl. You actually thought you could outsmart us." "I don't have to outsmart you," Andrew gasped, struggling against the guard's grip. "I just had to keep you busy." "Busy?" Julian frowned. "Busy for what?" Whoop whoop. A siren wailed, not in the distance, right outside the window, then another, and another. Blue and red lights began to flash against the curtains of the study, illuminating the room in a chaotic strobe. "What is that?" Julian ran to the window and looked out. His jaw dropped. The driveway was filled with police cars, not just local police, black SUVs with federal government plates, FBI. "Police! Search warrant!" A voice boomed over a megaphone. "Open the door!" "No," Julian whispered. No, this isn't happening." "I didn't come alone," Andrew said, smiling despite the pain in her arm. "I was wearing a wire, Julian. Gabriel has been listening to everything. Your confession, the threat to kill me. It's all recorded." Julian looked at her with pure hatred. "You bitch!" "Sir, we need to move," one of the guards said, panic in his voice. "The feds are breaching the gate." "Burn it!" Julian panicked, looking at the ledger. "I need to burn it!" He ran toward the fireplace, fumbling for a lighter. Crash! The front door of the manor was rammed open. Heavy footsteps thundered on the stairs. "FBI, hands in the air!" Julian got the lighter to flick on. He held the flame to the pages of the ledger. "No!" Andrew screamed. She stomped on the guard's foot, breaking his hold for a split second. She threw herself at Julian, tackling him into the fireplace. They tumbled onto the hearth. The lighter flew out of his hand. The ledger skidded across the floor. Julian punched her, a solid, desperate blow to the ribs. Andrew gasped, the air leaving her lungs. He scrambled on top of her, his hands closing around her throat. "I will kill you!" he screamed, spittle flying onto her face. "I made you! I own you!" Andrew's vision started to spot. She clawed at his hands, but he was too strong. Suddenly, a black boot connected with Julian's face. Julian flew off Andrew, crashing into the desk. Sophia stood there, flanked by 3 armed FBI agents. "You don't own anyone, big brother," Sophia said, her voice shaking with adrenaline. She reached down and helped Andrew up. "Are you okay?" Andrew coughed, clutching her throat. I got the book." An FBI agent picked up the red ledger from the floor. He opened it, scanned a page, and nodded to his team. "This is it. Secure the evidence." Julian was groaning on the floor, blood pouring from his nose. 2 agents hauled him to his feet and slapped handcuffs on his wrists. "You can't do this!" Julian shouted as they dragged him out. "Do you know who my mother is? I want my lawyer." "Your lawyer is currently turning state's evidence to save his own skin." Gabriel Stone walked into the room, looking calm and collected amidst the chaos. Marcus Blackwood surrendered 10 minutes ago. Gabriel looked at Andrew. "You did good, kid. We got it all." "Where is Victoria?" Andrew asked, her voice raspy. "Downstairs," Sophia said grimly. "Let's go watch." They walked out of the study and to the top of the grand staircase. Below, the scene was pure chaos. Officers were carrying out boxes of files. The senator, who had been hiding in the kitchen, was being led out in handcuffs, shielding his face with his jacket. And in the center of the foyer, Victoria Thorne stood. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't fighting. She was standing perfectly still, her hands cuffed behind her back. Her hair was perfect. Her dress was immaculate, but her face was grey. She looked up and saw Andrew and Sophia standing at the top of the stairs. For a moment, the mask slipped. Victoria looked old. She looked defeated. "Sophia!" Victoria called out, her voice devoid of emotion. "Call the firm. Fix this." Sophia leaned over the railing. "I did call the firm, Mother. I fired them. And then I called the press." Sophia pointed to the open door. Outside, beyond the police line, dozens of paparazzi cameras were flashing. The news vans had arrived. "Smile, Mother," Sophia said coldly. "You always wanted to be on the front page." An officer gently pushed Victoria forward. "Let's go, Ma'am." As Victoria was led out into the blinding flash of cameras, Andrew felt a weight lift off her chest. The house, once so terrifyingly large, just felt like a pile of expensive bricks. "Come on," Sophia said, putting an arm around Andrew. "Let's get out of here. I'm craving a cheeseburger." They walked down the stairs, past the shattered remnants of the Thorne dynasty. As they stepped outside, the cool night air hit Andrew's face. It smelled like rain. It smelled like freedom. But as the adrenaline faded, the reality set in. She was homeless. She was divorced. She had no job. "What now?" Andrew asked, looking at the flashing lights. Gabriel stepped up beside them. "Now? Now the real work begins. The trial will be long. It will be ugly. They will try to smear your name in the press." Andrew touched her bruised cheek. She felt the jagged ends of her hair. "Let them try," she said. "I'm not hiding anymore." 6 months later, the air in Brooklyn tasted different. It didn't smell like fear or expensive perfume. It smelled of oil paint, cheap wine, and victory. Andrew stood in the center of a converted warehouse, surrounded by a crowd of people. But these weren't the vultures from the Thorne dinner parties. These were real people. Critics, students, neighbors, and art lovers. They were whispering, but not about her scandal. They were whispering about her talent. "It's breathtaking," a woman murmured, staring at the centerpiece of the exhibition. The painting was 6 feet tall. It depicted a golden birdcage, shattered and twisted, with a single battered dove flying upward into a stormy grey sky. The title card read simply, "The Exit." "You outdid yourself," a voice said beside her. Andrew turned to see Gabriel Stone. He wasn't wearing his usual shark-skin suit. He was wearing a casual blazer and jeans, looking less like a lawyer and more like a man who was finally off the clock. "I had good inspiration," Andrew smiled, taking a sip of sparkling water. "How is the case?" "Closed," Gabriel said, a satisfying grin spreading across his face. He gestured to a small television mounted behind the gallery bar. The news was on mute, But the headline was screaming in bold red letters. Thorne Empire crumbles. Victoria. Thorne sentenced to 20 years. Julian Thorne gets 15. Andrew watched the screen. There was footage of Julian being led out of the courthouse. He looked gaunt, unshaven, and terrified. The arrogance was gone, stripped away by 6 months of federal holding cells. Victoria followed, looking frail, hiding her face from the cameras she once loved so much. They lost everything, Gabriel explained. The assets were seized to pay back the investors and the charities they defrauded. The manor is being auctioned off next week. And my debt? Andrew asked, though she knew the answer. Erased, Gabriel confirmed. You are a free woman, Andrew Vance, and a wealthy one, considering the settlement Sophia insisted on paying you from her own trust fund. Speaking of Sophia, the young heiress walked over, holding 2 glasses of champagne. She looked exhausted, but happy. She had cut her hair even shorter and was wearing a leather jacket. To the end of an era, Sophia said, handing a glass to Gabriel and clinking hers against Andrew's water. And to the new CEO of Thorne Vance Enterprises. I decided to keep your name on the building, Andrew, to remind me not to turn into a monster. You could never be them, Sophia, Andrew said softly, hugging her former sister-in-law. I'm turning the manor into a shelter, Sophia said, for women escaping financial abuse. I think it's fitting, don't you? It's perfect, Andrew whispered, tears pricking her eyes. So, Gabriel said, checking his watch. The gallery closes in 10 minutes. My car is outside. I believe I promised to take you to a dinner where no one slaps you, and the food is actually edible. Andrew looked at Gabriel. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the need to shrink. She didn't feel the need to ask for permission. She looked back at the TV one last time. Julian's face was disappearing into a police van. The man who had locked her in a golden cage was now entering a cage of real steel bars. She turned her back on the screen. She looked at her painting. She looked at Sophia, her best friend. She looked at Gabriel, her future. I'd love that, Andrew said, grabbing her coat. She walked out of the gallery and into the cool night air, leaving the ghost of Mrs. Thorne behind forever. And that is the story of how Andrew Vance turned her tragedy into triumph. It's a reminder that sometimes the people who claim to love us the most are the ones holding us back. Julian and Victoria thought money and power made them untouchable, but they forgot that the truth is the most powerful weapon of all. Andrew didn't just survive, she thrived, proving that you can walk through fire and come out the other side, not as ash, but as a diamond. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What would you have done in Andrew's shoes? Would you have gone back into the house to get the ledger, or would you have run for safety? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story of justice served. Thanks for watching.